Hello and welcome to the Sanctuary, a safe space to speak from the heart. I'm your host, Israel, and my guest today is Ian Shepherd, the owner of Right Start Newcomer Services. Thanks for coming on the show today,
Oh, you're
Ian.
welcome. Thanks for having me.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, today's good. The only thing that I'm not so excited about is the weather. I think we have rain coming for the next 2 weeks, which is pretty standard for
you know,
Halifax this time of year, I think.
so when I was getting ready to move, one thing so we use Zysan services, and one of the things, you take all these courses, and kind of one of the courses is like how to make small talk, and like almost every time it's like you have to talk about the weather. I'm like weather. And then I moved, and really, you've been in the lift, and oh, how's the weather today? Yeah, that it's just like the weather. But I think it's kind of, it's pretty unique here because the weather, like, you can start really, really cold and end up really, really warm with some rain in between, all in the same
Exactly.
day.
Yeah, I think that's why we like to talk about it so much because it changes, right? So there is always something to talk
Yeah,
about. Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk about you today, Right Start Newcomer Services. So what pushed you to start it?
Yeah. I started working on the business about a year ago. I left my position at ISANS that you just mentioned. So my training is in, language instruction. I've been an English teacher for a really long time. And more recently, before I left my position at ISANS, I was the coordinator of orientation services. So I would deliver, training for new Canadians and teach them how to make small talk and start a business or find a job or get a health card and all that stuff. And I really found that I had a passion for that. And I love teaching. It doesn't really matter what I'm teaching. And I love working with newcomers because, they're so enthusiastic, and I really felt that they needed my help and they were very appreciative for that help. So, to make their transition to life in Canada easier, they need support and they need people to help them out and hold their hand a little bit, not physically, but figuratively, they need somebody there to sort of guide them. And yeah, I loved what I did there, but I felt that there was a need for maybe more services, or there were some gaps that I saw that weren't being necessarily met by the government provided services. So I thought maybe I could, find a niche there, find a gap in the market that I could step into. And working at ISANS was great. The people were great. The clients were great. But I was there for 11 years, and I just felt it was time to move on.
Mm, mm. And so I'm gonna jump back a bit. What you said, you're like an English language instructor. What made you decide to go that route? Like, is that something you want to be growing up like a teacher?
I've always thought about teaching. Of course, when I was in high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I was sort of pushed into, the sciences and maths and engineering and stuff like that because that's what my brother did. And, that's what my parents thought would be a good career path for me. So I went to
He's
well, oh
older.
yeah, he's 3 years older than me. And, by the time I was
Okay.
in high school, he was already at Queen's University studying engineering. And, so I sort of followed in that path a little bit. So when I got to university, I was in sciences. I did quite poorly and I failed out a bunch of classes, so I switched to arts.
Mm.
I did end up with an economics degree, and what do you do with an economics degree? Maybe work at a bank, maybe get some type of business job. But my grades weren't great. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I had a friend living in Taiwan at the time, my next door neighbor from when I grew up. And he was living
Mm.
there teaching English at the time, so I thought, that sounds pretty cool, right? You get to travel, you get to live overseas and experience a different culture. So I thought, why not? I'm not
Mm.
doing anything. I might as well make money and travel. So I went to Taiwan for 4 years, where I taught mostly children. But it was a good way to get your feet wet and find out, is this something
Mm.
that you like to do? So I did love teaching, but I didn't like teaching kids necessarily.
Why not?
Oh, I didn't have the patience, I tried. Yeah.
In film, they say you don't want to work with kids or
Oh, yeah.
animals, and I try to follow that
Yeah.
rule. Yeah. So what I guess when people always talk about teaching English, in my mind, I used to think it's sort of like translating, but it's not. Like you don't really need to understand the language to teach English, right?
Yeah, well, when I went to Taiwan, of course, I didn't speak a word of Chinese when I arrived. But, there are teaching methods that allow you to teach to somebody who doesn't speak a word of English, right? So a lot of pictures. When I was working with kids, it was songs and things like that. So they learned the sound of the language first, maybe. They don't necessarily know what they're saying, or a lot of them weren't speaking much in their own language because I was teaching kids as young as 3. So basically, the
Oh.
whole gamut from 3 to 16 or 17 when they're graduating from high school. So, kids at 3.
What would it Yeah, what would a typical day look like?
So when I was in Taiwan, it was mostly in the afternoons and evenings. So, the
Hmm.
average day, you stumble out of bed at, 9, 10, 11. Often, you would take some Chinese classes. So when I first arrived, I got up in the morning, took Chinese classes, got some lunch, made my way into work around maybe 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And then you would teach from 2 to 9 at night. So that was a pretty standard
So
schedule.
in the 4 years, did you get fluent in
No,
Chinese?
no, no.
Also, I was gonna ask, like, learning to read Chinese, you also learn to write it, or it's just like spoken?
So there is a way to learn Chinese through the Roman alphabet, which is called pinyin.
What?
So basically, it makes the sounds using the Roman alphabet. So it writes it out instead of relying on Chinese
Oh,
characters.
I hear you.
So that's where most people
I
start.
mean, but you could, order your food or say hello, things like
Yeah.
this, right?
So I took classes
Do
for
you still have
six
a?
months, 6 to 9 months. So I had the basics. I could say some food. I could give taxi driver directions to my place. I could answer the phone, that type of thing. So the very basics. But my plan was never to stay in Taiwan super long term.
Mm.
So, like I said, I was there for 4 years. I always knew that I wanted to come back to Canada at some point. So, I wasn't really interested in learning language for its own sake at that time. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I just got the basics and then went about my daily life.
But like 4 years is a long time. What kept you there that long?
I mean, I made a lot of friends. The money was pretty good. The taxes were low. The living expenses were low. So I was able to save money. We got time off 3 to 4 weeks a year. So it's such a central location in Asia that you can hop over to Hong Kong or Singapore, or I went to the Philippines and Thailand. So all of these countries are pretty convenient. You're making relatively more money than the people there would make. So traveling to those places was really inexpensive. And I sort
Mm.
of,
Well,
I was
yeah.
going to say, you get in a habit. So it's a routine, right? And you get time off, you travel, come back to work, save some money, and you just sort of fall into that routine. But, after 4 years, I realized my career prospects in Taiwan were limited to, teaching mostly, because that's all that I was really qualified to do. I could have opened, say, a language school there, but some of the rules in Taiwan say that, if you're not a citizen or permanent resident, you can't open a school all by yourself. So you would need a Taiwanese partner
Oh,
with you.
yeah.
And yeah, I didn't really want to go that route. So I decided to come
Okay.
back.
And how was it for you after leaving in Taiwan for 4 years, coming back to Canada?
Yeah, so there was a bit of that reverse culture shock for sure.
In what way?
So many white people. It was a bit of a shock just seeing, you're used to seeing a 95% Chinese or Taiwanese population, and you come back, 95% of the people are white. fewer people around for sure. So, I hear a lot of from my clients now that when they arrive in Halifax, they're kind of shocked and nobody's around, right? So, to them, the streets are barren. I was talking to a couple the other day. They were on my live stream and they were talking about coming to Halifax in the middle of summer on Barrington Street, and they're shocked that nobody's there. And I was thinking, like, this is the middle of the summer. This is the busiest time in Halifax.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, 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 yes. I think for me, because when I first moved, I lived in Truro for a while, and I worked in Halifax. And what I noticed is, it's like there's these huge gaps of just forest and trees, and then a little settlement, and then forest and trees, and then little settlement. And like I wasn't used to that at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. It is pretty sparsely
And then
populated for sure. Yeah.
yeah, and then the other thing that hit me again is just how massive Canada is. It's just big, 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 big,
Yeah.
big. Even in Truro, like would live on one part of town, but then just to get to the grocery store is like another part of town.
You pretty much have to drive everywhere in Canada, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then, like I lived in Lagos, I lived in Cape Town for a while. And you could, consider walking stuff, but like here a car is sort of a necessity, especially when it comes to winter. And when moved here, I moved in winter, which would never have. Well, I would never advise anyone to do that, but if you can suck it up, then like you've experienced the worst, and then it gets better from there.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So you moved back, and what did you do after the culture shock?
Yeah, so, I spent maybe 2 or 3 months, stayed with my parents for a while, traveled around Canada a little bit. I think I visited my brother in Ontario because, I hadn't seen him much over the 4 years that I was there. Then,
Hmm.
I found a job here at a local language school. So I started teaching, it was a private company, teaching mostly international students who wanted to come and study in Canada before they made it to
Hmm.
university where they wanted to continue their studies. So I was there for a couple of years, and I was teaching part time, and I was sort of the social activities coordinator part time, and that was a lot of fun.
What would that
Oh,
involve?
planning outings. It was this pretty sweet job because once a week I got to take them to a famous bar downtown called the Ale House, and we
Oh.
had some drinks and had a good time. So, I was getting paid to
Mm.
basically show the clients a good time. So that was pretty sweet.
And what made you so the 4 years you were in Taiwan, did you ever come back to Canada
Yep,
or
I think I did once. So one time during those
okay.
4 years, I think Christmas time, I came back.
Mm. Mm. Okay, and then you had this job for a while. How I guess what made you leave and where did you leave to?
From my job here in Canada, the language school.
Hmm.
So my goal was always to work with new immigrants. So I was pursuing opportunities to do that, and so I saw a job was posted, or actually I think I was getting my master's at the time. So I have my master's in education, and one of my classmates was then working at Ice Hands. So we started to talk about what it was like there, and I told her I was
Mm.
interested. A job opportunity came up, and she recommended me. I bombed my first interview and didn't get that job. Uh,
How do you know you bumped it? Like, you know, w- how do you know you bumped it? Let's start
Okay.
with that
Well, I
first.
mean, actually there were 2 rounds. The first round, I thought I nailed it, right? I did well. Second round, I know I bombed it because, some of the questions I couldn't even answer. So when you can't formulate a coherent sentence in answer to a question, then you're pretty sure that you didn't get the job. So,
One thing I've found, like with interviews, honestly, sometimes do you ever, in your experience, like, do you ever find that it's like a crapshoot, right? It's sometimes it's how that person feels that day.
yeah, yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, I'm just going to throw you low ball questions. How are you doing today?" And what is one
Yeah.
plus one, like the 1+1 version of whatever it is you're
Yeah.
doing. And then when they are super upset, they'll be like, find the square root of 69 divided by, I'm like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Definitely.
Okay, so you bombed, like, how did you handle that, and how long did you take before you tried to get a job there again?
So, I was disappointed, but, I knew I would try again if a job came up. So I think it was probably a few months went by. I think I took some time off.
By the way, what was the job you applied for?
It was just a English instructor at ISANS working with new immigrants to
Okay.
Canada. So I did apply.
Okay.
Was reevaluating my life, decided to take another vacation. So I traveled around Canada, traveled through the States. It was a great vacation. I drove to Vegas for my friend's bachelor party
Wait, where did you drive from
from here.
first?
So, well, not
What?
directly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
drove to Toronto. My brother's close to Toronto. Stayed with him for a few days, and then I went south. Through Detroit, all those states on the way to Las Vegas.
Yeah. A bus put me on a plane and take me where I need to go to, man.
But
I understand the pleasure of driving because, I've driven once to, actually, I think twice to New
okay,
York. And it's fun because you can, like, stop and just see
yeah,
stuff. But then, oh man, it's like it never ends.
yeah. I was.
Especially if you're the one
Oh
driving.
yeah. So I did that solo. So I was driving the whole time.
Oh my god, that's even worse.
I don't know. Maybe it's a Canadian thing. Maybe we like road trips and we like
Yeah.
the splendor of the open road and the adventure of it. I don't
It's
know.
like it's summer. Get the car ready. We're just gonna go somewhere and just drive and drive and
Yeah.
drive. Okay, so you did this. This is like what, weeks and weeks to do that
The
trip,
whole
right?
trip was like 6 weeks. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sounds
Yeah.
about right. How was the wedding in Vegas,
Oh, it
though?
was good. Yeah. I mean, we had a lot of fun. That was my first time in Vegas. And I think everybody should go experience it at least once in their life because it's
Why?
such a spectacle. I mean, everything's blown out of proportion and has to be the biggest and the best and the loudest.
Yeah.
So you got to check it out at least once. I mean, I blew way too much
Okay.
money. I mean, yeah.
Okay. So you made your way back to
Yeah.
Halifax, and then did you still have that other
Yeah,
job,
yeah.
or?
So they gave me like a
Okay.
leave, and I was coming back to, continue my part-time role there. And then this job at ISAN sort of just opened up, and I don't think they even interviewed me that time. So they were in such
See,
an
see
yeah,
what I
exactly.
said? It's how the person feels that day. I told you.
I'm pretty sure I did blow that interview, but I think they were desperate for somebody like within a couple days to come on and take that
Okay.
role because
Okay.
the
Yeah.
person I replaced was sick, and so it was an urgent need. I was maybe the first person on the list to call, and I did get that position. So basically, I wasn't formally hired. I was just filling a gap that was left by the person before me. So yeah, I got in there part time, and that led to a full time permanent position over time. So yeah, that's how I got that job.
And I guess, something you've done pretty much consistently, even in the new business with Right Start Newcomer Services, is essentially teach. What do you love about teaching?
That's a great question. So I love the interaction with the clients, with the students. I love how, you sort of see that light bulb moment that they get something. You see the progression. So, I really like teaching sort of the low to intermediate levels because that's where you see the biggest progression with learners. I mean, once you're at the really high levels, learning comes more slowly. When you're at the beginning levels, you can't really have that conversation and the engagement and the joking around so much with the students. So I like that sort of high beginner, intermediate level. Yeah, and they were just so kind, and it was a lot of fun. We always had fun in class. They joked around with me. I joked around with them. We played games. We did a lot of different things. So I like it. I'm I am an introvert, so I'm an introverted person, but
No
yeah.
way.
Can you tell?
You masking
Oh,
very
really?
well
Okay.
then.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think a lot of teachers are introverts, and they can put on a show for a while. But then, at the end of the day, you're spent because you've expended all your external energies, right? So I am an introvert, but I didn't mind being in front of the class and putting myself out there because, I got used to it. My first few classes, I was scared as hell. My face was red. I was sweating like crazy.
What are you scared of
I don't know.
though?
It's just, the public speaking thing, maybe. And afraid of looking like an idiot and not knowing what you're talking about and all that stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, explain this CLB thing to me. Like, so I mean, my English isn't bad, but it's kind of to do much in Canada, you need to get like your CLB
Yeah.
scores. First of all, what does CLB mean, and like, why is this
That's a
essential?
good question. So CLB stands for Canadian Language Benchmarks. So
Okay.
this is a created system for gauging, mostly for immigrants, so new immigrants' language level, in order to place them in the right classes for government-funded language
Oh.
programs. So mainly it's just used by the government, although some universities and colleges may accept a CLB level for admittance there. But it's not necessary. So if you're not getting any government funded services, you find a job on your own, you don't need that type of thing, then you don't really need a CLB. But it's a free test.
Yeah, is that even possible in Canada? I don't think there's really something you do where like you don't get some kind of funding from the government. Like, is that ever possible? Like in Canada though, because like I've been here for a while, and the really cool things has some kind of government funding. You kind of see the little flag at the bottom of the thing. Even movies,
Oh yeah, they pump a lot of money into like Canadian filmed movies and that type of thing. So that's one of the reasons our taxes are so high. So the government funds a lot of stuff. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. And I guess I'm one of those people that I don't care how high my tax is as long I'm seeing what the tax is doing. So I don't complain. And the very first like, so I don't think I'll ever complain about my tax cuz one time like my knee hurt, and like I'm kind of a wuss, but it was really really bad. And then I went to the hospital. Like, I think that was the very first time since I came to Canada that I went to hospital. Like, actually went to the emergency. Went there, and then they checked my knee, and I got an X-ray, and they did everything, and they, told me what was wrong, gave me a prescription, everything, and then I just walked out of the hospital. That, like, I think so there's the coming out of the airport and like freezing my behind off. That was the one shocking thing, and that was another thing that like I went to the hospital, and like I got this really really, like, I was, oh my god, how am I gonna pay for this? And I just walked out, and I'm like, okay, I don't care. I didn't even look at how much came out of my thing, because like what it's doing is super important and super essential. That was one of the times like, okay, I made a right
yeah.
choice. I made a right choice. So you were in Iceland for 11 years, and then was there a point in the 11 years, Right Start Newcomer Services started coming to the fore of your brain, like, okay, this is something I'd like to
Yeah,
do?
I'd say about a year or maybe a bit more than that before I left my position there. So I always thought that because near the end of my time at Icelands, I was the orientation coordinator. So I was giving a ton of workshops to different groups of people. So some that had just arrived, and also some that were in the language classes. So I would go around and talk about taxes. What else did I talk about? Winter in Canada. So the cold weather, how to dress. So I did like a
Change your
change your
tires.
tires, all that stuff. So I had these like five or
Yeah.
six workshops that I repeated over and over and over again. And I thought, I'm getting pretty bored of this. It's But yeah, I must have done like that tax workshop over 3 years. I would say I did it, you know, close to 50 or 60 times.
Wow. So I mean, you know what the next slide is gonna be.
Yep. So I knew it. I had it down. I mean, my job was easy, but it was repetitive. And, I would see the same
Yeah.
clients year after year for the tax workshop. And some of them, after they've been in Canada 4 or 5 years, they're like, oh shit, here comes Ian again to talk about taxes. We're going home, teacher. So,
Was it, it's usually around this time of the year, March, April, around this time of the year, you have to get things ready because,
yeah,
you have to pay the government
it's
their
tax
money.
time.
So you're like, and then what was the process of setting it up?
For you mean setting up the business or setting up? Oh yeah. So yeah, like a year or so before I left Ice Sands, I was getting kind of bored, you could say, and then I thought, it's crazy I'm doing this, 50, 60 times the same workshop. So I thought it's got to be put online, whether it's a live stream or create resources and put them on YouTube. So I started to see gaps. And I also thought, there's no program in Halifax that gives tours of the city. So I thought I'd like to do city tours, meet people within a week or so after arrival, answer their questions they have about Halifax and settling, show them around, helping them make connections and stuff like that. So I started to see a few little gaps. So yeah, I did decide, probably a year or two ago. Then I finally gave my notice at the end of March last year. And then COVID hit and immigration basically shut down. So I was like, oh shit, what did I do, right? So I decided to keep going, plug away. Then I applied for this entrepreneurship training program. So the government funds a program called SEB.
Told ya, government funds everything.
Yeah, you got to take advantage, right? Once you see how much
Right,
taxes
right. Because you pay all these taxes,
yeah,
man.
you might as well get what's yours, right? So
right,
I applied for this self-employment program with the Nova Scotia government, and I got accepted into that. And that provided me sort of an allowance. It's like a living allowance while you're taking these entrepreneurship classes at a place called SEED, so Center for Entrepreneurship Education and Development. So we did the training with SEED. They gave me a business counselor that I met with once a month. Then you write your business plan and do customer discovery interviews, and then they help you through all stages of the process. So that was really helpful for me. I knew a bit, I read a lot before I even got to that stage, but it was good to have somebody to bounce ideas off of. Even my classmates that were in the program with me, they were really great. But the best thing for me was being held accountable, because I'm the type of person that puts things off, maybe procrastinates. But if you have a business counselor there that you're meeting with every month, you had financial projections that you're supposed to meet. So those things really help me be accountable and actually get my business off the ground.
How long was the course for? Or was the the seed program
So I
for?
think I started last June, and it just wrapped up now. So basically I'm out of the program now from the end of March. So it was like 40 something weeks, 46 weeks. But the actual workshops and training was finished, I think, last September. Yeah.
Okay. But and then during the program, you actually started setting up the business, getting all those things in place. And then did you actually have clients while still doing the course? I mean,
Yep, I had a few clients, so mostly tutoring. So I provide online language tutoring for people that want some extra English practice. So I had started doing that, I think, last summer. I had a couple tutoring clients. So I did have, basically I started earning a bit of revenue while I was getting my business set up.
yeah, no, that's great. And I love the name Right Start. It reminds me of something my grandmom always says. It's like, just start, but it is really important if you can start the right way. Start strong, because that kind of gives you this momentum to keep going. And even though I started in South Africa using services that Iceland had. I didn't even know that I could like continue those services when I moved here.
Really?
Really? So, yeah, I didn't. And I'm not sure why. Like, I wasn't really told. I, just came here. And oh, I'm here, cool. And I think I only went once. I went once to Iceland to like, because I've been corresponding with this person for months, just to see the person and say, oh, thank you, you helped me. And I think the person was also leaving, so maybe they didn't mention like there are other services you could take here. But also like I'm just like kind of eager. It's like, oh, there are so many opportunities here. I'm just gonna take it. So I just, myself personally started searching stuff and looking for like jobs and things like that. I didn't even use those services. So I'm like, am I doing okay now? Maybe, but it would have been helpful to, like you said, have someone holding your hand, figuratively, kind of to navigate things in Canada because it's different. Like it's a different system entirely, and not just the weather. So you started this, and how did you come up with the name? And what are some of the services that your company offers?
So the name, I was bouncing a few names back and forth. None of them really hit me as being appropriate. So, for me, the name had to be quite simple. So Right Start, is there's only one way to spell it. It's short words, so they could find my website basically. So I couldn't have any fancy words, long words, words that are ambiguously spelled. So, I don't know how exactly I came up with that. My vision was something to help newcomers get off on the right foot and get the right start in Canada. It is very
Yeah.
similar to the Start Right program. So Scotiabank has like a Start Right, account and program for newcomers. So maybe that was in my head. But actually, I think it came to me in a dream. And I woke up and I was
Oh.
like, okay, this is it. I have to make a decision because I needed a logo, I needed business cards, I needed a website. So eventually, you just have to choose one that sort of resonates with you a bit. And so that's how I came up with that.
Awesome. What are some of the services you offer?
So basically, what we're doing now, so we're just getting started, but we're offering the one-on-one English tutoring. So we're doing those online because of COVID. I'm hoping to expand to do like small group classes, either online, maybe in person once we're allowed to meet in a group. We also do city tours. So we do those once a week on Saturday mornings. And those are free for participants to come along, get to meet other people, see the city. But, we do accept tips because I'm not government funded in any way. So have to make money somehow. So I put that out there. If they want to leave a tip, they can. If they don't want to, that's fine too.
How long does the tour take? And then, is it a particular route you
Yep.
follow?
So we start sort of in the center of downtown Halifax. We start at the Halifax Commons, so at the Emera Oval on Cogswell Street, and then we sort of make our way through the public gardens, down Spring Garden Road, eventually end up at the waterfront near the ferry terminal. And the whole tour takes about 2 to 2.5 hours, depending on how many people are there, the questions, the speed that people can walk, that type of thing.
And how many people do you take?
Right now, we haven't hit that upper limit, but because of COVID, 10 to 15, I think would be the upper limit. But
You mentioned,
yeah, I was just
sorry,
gonna
yeah,
say
go on.
we're just getting started. So the largest group we've had is four, and the last group we had was one. But I didn't mind. It was fun. And plus, it's winter in Canada. I mean, it's cold, it's windy, it's snowing sometimes. So people aren't super eager yet to go.
But it's getting warm though. I mean, after the rain passes.
Exactly. Yeah.
um, and you mentioned the ferry terminal. Do they get on the ferry?
Yeah, so, the last few times there wasn't time for me to go with them and take them over to Dartmouth, but they have gone on their own, right? So I show them how to get on the ferry. Some of them live in Dartmouth, so that's a good way to get home for them. And often it's a first time.
That's a two. Yeah, that's something I've not done yet. I've not gotten on the ferry, and I haven't taken the harbor
Oh,
hopper.
yeah.
Those two things. I keep saying I'll do it this summer. I'll do it this summer, but then I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't do it. maybe
Yeah.
soon. So now you mentioned some live streaming things. Is
Yeah.
that also something you do with your
Exactly.
business?
Yeah. So we're doing like English learning live streams twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays at various CLB levels. So, I noticed a
Mm,
gap from people arriving in Canada to, getting all their forms and papers, getting registered at ISANS, and actually being placed in language classes. So in some cases, this can
mm,
take weeks, sometimes months. And I figured they need to do something. So if they can watch my free live streams on YouTube and Facebook, it's better than nothing. Maybe some of them want some
mm,
extra language training, and then they can take my one-on-one services. So I'm doing the English live
mm.
streams, and then once a week we do a settlement-focused live stream where we talk to a local
Oh yeah.
expert. Last week we had two immigrants that came within the last year or two, and they were sort of sharing their
Mm-hmm.
settlement experience, providing some tips and suggestions for newcomers. So we interview people like that. We interview like local mortgage brokers, realtors, investment people, anything that is sort of relevant to the settlement process. So they can participate
Mm-hmm.
live and ask questions, or they can watch the recording afterwards on YouTube or Facebook.
Oh, I was just going to ask if you leave the recordings up or
Absolutely,
something.
yeah. So all that's on our YouTube channel, Right Start Newcomer Services. So yeah, check it out, subscribe. Yeah,
Um, yeah. So, I mean, just down south is the US, and things are changing now with the new government, but till recently, the immigration policies were totally different from Canada's approach. Why do you think, in your experience, Canada is taking this approach, and at least the previous government in the US was taking a different approach?
that's a really good question. So, Canada's approach for a long time has been, high immigration levels, especially because they saw the demographics of Canada, where the population is aging. So the baby boomers are starting to retire, starting to require more services. And there was a big gap of taxpayers, right? So not enough
Mm,
taxpayers filling the gap. Companies weren't able to hire enough people to have the people with the skills and training they needed. So for quite a while,
mm,
Canada has had a very open immigration policy, and those numbers are continuing to increase. So the last time I saw, they're looking at like 400,000 new immigrants this year. I don't know,
mm,
because of COVID that could be impacted, but that's a
mm,
record. That's way more than they've previously accepted. So that accounts for about 1% of our population coming in each year. So
mm,
there are many categories. There are refugees, there are skilled workers, there are entrepreneurs. So I love
mm,
Canada's approach because it makes us stronger. I think it makes us more diverse. It brings in new ways of
mm,
thinking, access to new markets, all that stuff. So I'm totally on board with Canada's approach. The US has
mm,
had, a different approach. And so they're much more conservative about immigration. With the previous president, I don't even want to say his name, but,
mhm,
he appealed to his base, and his base was xenophobic. They didn't want people coming from Mexico or South America or from anywhere except for like the Nordic countries, I think they said. Um, so, their approach is to keep America closed off, America first, and make sure all Americans have jobs before you bring in immigrants. So, to me, that's totally the wrong approach. And it's sort of a scarcity mindset that there's only so many jobs to go around and so much money and so much business. But, I have the abundance mindset that the more people who come, the more services they need, the more things they buy, the economy will grow as a result of that. Yeah, so
mhm, mhm,
I love our approach. Hopefully, in the US, it does. I think Biden has taken some steps to open up immigration a little bit more. But yeah, I think,
mhm,
they also have the same demographic challenges that we do. So they have a baby boom. They're not having as many children as they used to. So they do need immigrants. So, to me, I don't know why an immigrant would choose the US over Canada. Lower taxes, higher salaries, but
Yeah, I don't know. Like the decision to me was a very easy one. Personally, I can only speak for myself. Like it was so easy. Plus, I'm black, so it was so easy to make that
yeah.
decision. Um, I'm gonna let you go, but before I do, I'm curious. Like so an immigrant is watching this. They live outside Canada. What are some things you think they should know before they move?
So, I think there's quite a few things. One is that there are services available pre-arrival. So you brought that up earlier. So services like SOPA and Arrive Prepared. So take those services. They're free once you receive your confirmation of permanent residency. You do have access to those services. Also do your research. So research the different parts of Canada, the different streams for immigration. Find one that works for you, but realize, you are able to move around once you get here. So if you decide, okay, Nova Scotia looks good, we're going to come to Halifax, and you don't like it, as long as you have your permanent residency, you're allowed to move anywhere else in Canada. So we see that quite a bit, people moving to Toronto, Vancouver. Although now, since coronavirus happened, we see people moving back here. And Halifax is
Yeah.
actually doing really well compared to the rest of Canada.
It's pretty much, I think, one of the safest places on earth. Like, you look at the numbers. I get this email daily, and it's like, 24 cases. I'm like, 24. There are places still in the
Yeah.
hundreds, and like Toronto is still locked down. So, hey, I mean, people actually go to their offices here. So I was in traffic the other day. That's when I was like, oh
Uh-oh.
wow, okay, life is kind of back to normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's pretty come to Halifax. It's come to Nova Scotia. It's really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. Also, the weather has its thing, but you get used to it. You get
Oh
used to
yeah,
it.
yeah. I mean, it's always
Except the
exciting.
winter, though. Except the
Yeah.
winter. I think personally for me, it's the shoveling that
Oh
gets
yeah.
to me. Like if I woke up and I didn't have to shovel, every other thing would be fine.
For me, it's in the winter, it's the short days. So that might be shocking for
Oh
people, right?
yeah.
When the sun goes down at 4 or 4:30, doesn't come up the next
Yeah.
day till 8 or something. So that's what gets to
But
me.
then you make up for it because, like in summer, it stays up to like 9. It's still bright outside,
Exactly.
so it's kind of like give and take, give and
Yeah.
take. Oh man, Ian, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing, talking about Taiwan and your business. Um, it's great that you found this niche and then you put yourself in there and you're giving services to people who need them. So thank you very much for what you're doing, and thank you so much for coming to the
You're
sanctuary
welcome.
today.
Thank you very much for having me and allowing me to talk for, 45 minutes and talk about my business. I really appreciate it, man.
Also, yeah, talking about the business, like how can people reach
That's a
you?
good question. So we have a website, so www.rightstartcanada.ca. We're also on
Mhm.
Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. What else? You can send me an email. So my email is ian@rightstartcanada.ca. So hopefully I
Awesome.
hear from you and would love to take you on a tour. Like I said, I offer some other services and you can check those out on the website as well. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so
All
much,
right. Thank you
Ian.
very much. Have a great one.